Please give it up for Rob Fromberg.
It occurs to me at one point in this story that anybody who didn't grow up in the age of the internet is going to say, why didn't you just pull out your smartphone? So for those of you who didn't live in the era before the internet, you have no idea how lost we all were at that time. But you're going to see hear evidence of that now. I had banked so many vacation days that I was beginning to think that the HR people whispered to one another and laughed as I walked down the hall. And I would hear people in the break room talk about their fantastic vacations. They were hang gliding one place and hiking another place, places that names I couldn't even pronounce and never heard of before. And so finally, with great reluctance, I booked a week at a tiny resort halfway down the Florida Keys, and I embarked on one of the toughest challenges for anyone, which is to attempt to have fun on vacation. The bus down Highway 1 let me off in front of the resort. And I looked at it, and predictably the resort looked a little seedier than it had in the brochure pictures, pre-internet brochures. And I looked up and down Highway 1, and I really didn't see much of anything, and kind of sighed. The next morning, I fled. I left, started down Highway 1, and just started walking south. I thought maybe I would run into a small town, or maybe a gas station and a restaurant, or just any sign of civilization. And I walked along, and it was sort of astonishing how, over the course of 10 minutes of walking, sort of nothing in my view changed. I was used to the city, where you walk 10 minutes and you saw, 100 different buildings and 100 different people. And it occurred to me also that I hadn't brought any or didn't own any sunscreen. And so I was putting my hand over the back of my neck as I felt the heat there and the sun beating down there. And then I needed to put my hands over my ears because I felt the sun there. And so I pulled the t-shirt up over the back of my neck and tried to use that, and then that just fell down, and things were not going well. I kept walking, saw nothing, and eventually I realized that if I didn't see any place I could go and get shelter, I was going to have to just turn around and walk back. And that would be the same amount of heat, the same amount of effort, the same amount of sweat, the same amount of walking. But eventually I realized I had to turn around, and that moment that moment of sort of defeat was palpable as a boulder. But there was also sort of a sense of relief and surrender. So it's sort of like, when you put yourself in the hands of a great, barber or of a physician. It's like, I'm surrendering my body now. And there's a sense of calm in that. And so I felt that I had been beaten down, and I was ready for my vacation. And at that point, I adopted the habit, the pattern that would serve that vacation for the rest of the week, and in a sense, sort of even felt like a new life. During the day, I would stay inside and wait. I waited for the sky to begin to darken, for evening to come. And when it was just starting to get dark, I would leave my room, and I would go to the check-in area. And next to the check-in area at the resort was a set of bookshelves. And they had used books for the people who were staying there. I think it says something about the quality of fun that people were expected to have when, on their vacation, they were choosing used books to read. And I would take the brightest colored book I could find that looked like an adventure book, and I'd take it down, and I'd go into the dining room, sit alone at a table, and I'd open to the middle of the book, I'd order one drink and the fish special, and I would read one scene from the adventure book, and I'd eat my meal, and I'd return the book. By that time, it would be dark. And I would walk to the pool and sit next to the pool. And you could see, amazing display of stars. But what I was really interested in was closer to what seemed like the surface of the water in the Gulf. And I would sit there every night, and about every 5 or 10 minutes, there'd be a glimmer of light, far away from any of the stars. And I decided that that glimmer of light was a smuggling operation that was taking place off the Gulf. And I would imagine myself tracking that smuggling operation. And I would find the source of where these criminals were and what they were doing and what nefarious things they were up to. And I would find that location, and it would be an empty building and an empty pier, and I would position myself near that pier. And every night I would sit next to that pier and wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.